Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the abstract lab. Previewed a little bit when I had you in the lab at the beginning of the semester, and hopefully you picked up your samples from the lab. If not, I will walk you through getting samples remotely later on. But if you've already got your sample your sample articles, then that's great. I've got my copy of the lab here. During the semester, you're going to do 2 abstracts that have a source of an article that was printed physically somewhere, even if you don't find it in a paper form. It may be in the library's databases, but those are things that were physically printed on paper somewhere. And so they have, magazine sources or journal sources, and they have volume and issue numbers, and they have dates, and they had a certain number of pages that they ran from and to. And that's all information that you're gonna put down when you write up your abstract, and you're gonna put down for the abstract lab, just because we're gonna walk you through how you do this. It's one of those things that seems tricky until you get used to it, and then you realize that as far as a written assignment, it's one of the easiest things you've ever done. You may not believe me, but it's true. So, if you're looking through the lab with me, is that abstracting a print article. Now, the articles that I have laid out don't necessarily fit all the parameters, because I've reused them and I printed them out, found them and printed them out a while ago. And what do I mean by that? When you find your own article, it needs to have been printed this year. With the coronavirus thing, it's going to be a little tricky to find physical copies. If you go to a bookstore that has a lot of magazines, then you can probably find Discover, Scientific American, a lot of the general things like The Atlantic does science articles that are trustworthy. The news magazines do some science articles that are trustworthy. So, but it's got to be 2020. If you go into the database, which I'll show you in a couple of minutes, you can limit the date range to, and we'll do 2019 and 2020 just because this makes this a difficult job this time. So we'll let you go back a year and a half as well. Usually it would be just 2020. So it needs to be from 2020. It needs to be from a reliable source in terms of articles. So it shouldn't be from, from a company magazine or, sports magazines don't have, you can't trust them for science information. Is that you can pretty much, a good news organization has a science editor. A science magazine is edited by people who know how that works. Is that like anything that's more like Cosmopolitan wouldn't have a science editor. Is that there's a lot of magazines out there that they may have articles in them that are science or medical. Medical is science, but you can't really trust them. So you need a reliable source. The article you find has got to be long enough. You've got to summarize it. You don't want to try to summarize a really short article because somebody has already written that article by summarizing a heck of a lot of stuff into one really tight package. So nobody ever believes me until they do this, but it's way easier to summarize a really long article than it is to summarize a really short article. But the article has to be at least a page of text, which means if your article's all on one page, it ain't a page of text because it's got a title, it probably has a picture. So that uses up space that should be text. So your article that's long enough is going to cover at least 2 pages in the printed form. And as I said, longer is better. Is that a lot of times sources that print longer articles break them down into pieces, which is what you have to do to abstract them anyway. And so they've kind of done part of your job for you. If you use a newspaper article, which you can do, that's a little tricky because the newspaper article has to be at least a half a page in the newspaper form. And that's a long article for a newspaper. It's hard to find those. So if you can, New York Times does do, science stuff on Wednesday. You might be able to do it. better to go with magazines. And my suggestion always is, don't go too technical. Don't find some obscure scientific journal where, I can't myself understand 1 out of every 4 words in the title. Because typically, you're going to not have enough background to really understand what they're talking about. And you don't have to totally understand an article in order to abstract it properly, but you need to understand at least a little. And I've seen people, write me an abstract, and I'm reading through the abstract. Now, all I've seen so far, at the end, I will go and look at the article. But so far, I've just seen the title, and I'm reading the abstract going, from the title, I can tell they don't know what this is about, that they're totally off in the weeds on this. And I will help you out in terms of using the databases. And as I said, Scientific American writes for a somewhat educated public, but it's there for like biologists to read about physics and physicists to read about chemistry. So those articles are relatively readable. Discover is meant for the general public. National Geographic is meant for the general public. When they write in news magazines about science, it's meant for the general public. So finding an understandable article is not that difficult to do. Working my way through the format. Let me just make sure that I covered everything. It's got to be new, it's got to be long enough, got to be from a reliable source, and it's got to be about biology. So it's got to be about living things. As I said, medicine counts. Space doesn't, unless they're talking about life on the search for life on Mars or something that has to do with life. But talking about how the sun works is not biology. If you look through your article, and except for the people that they talk to, there's nothing really alive in it. You're not looking at a biology article. So something like Popular Science, which is more engineering and physics and electronics and stuff, doesn't often have a good biology article in it. But sometimes they do, so that can be another source as well. And specialty magazines that, like ecology magazines or wildlife magazines, sometimes even, equestrian magazines, if they got somebody who really understands the science, can be reliable. So you've got your sample. I'll show you in a second. If you don't have the samples from the lab, I'll show you how to find the ones that I want you to look at online. But right now, I'm just going to walk you through what you're going to give me. Tell me the authors. This is how you format the abstract. First, you start off with who wrote the thing. Last name first, as many of them as there are, just list them and list them and list them. And then, this is how science works. We want to know who did it and how old is it. So the second thing you put up is the year of publication, which should be 2020 or 2019. Or if it isn't, you've done something wrong right off the bat. The article has a name, so give me the title of the article. Now there's a weird rule about writing these where you capitalize it like it was a sentence rather than like it was a title. So you capitalize the first word and any proper nouns, but everything else is lowercase. You'll notice when you go through the databases, they do that a lot. Not consistently, but they do that a lot, because that's the format that most people have been trained to do. But whoever's putting up the database stuff doesn't, they're not all trained the same way. Then the article came out of some sort of publication. I want the title of the publication. I want the details on the publication, the volume, the issue, and the pages. If you get something that doesn't have volume, issues, and pages, I do expect you to tell me there doesn't appear to be a volume or an issue. That tells me at least you looked for it, because I'm going to go look at it. And I can't tell whether you forgot to do it or you looked unless you say, no, there isn't one there. Then I know you looked. If you do get an article out of the databases, which is a good way to find articles in this era of, don't touch stuff, then tell me which database you took it from. I'll show you the databases in a second. What you're going to do is read through the article. Now, how closely you read the article is totally up to you. You don't necessarily need to read and intensely understand an article in order to abstract it, but you need to have some idea. Very first thing you're going to start with, and the first thing that I'm asking you on the lab, is that you're done with the article, take a step back and in a sentence, tell me what the basic, what's the article about? Somebody looks over your shoulder, what's that about? You're gonna tell them in one sentence. Abstracts are summaries, they're general. So you start with a general, this is what the article's about, you know. It's about the discovery of life on Mars. It's about the development of a COVID vaccine. It's about how COVID works differently than other viruses. You know, that's its general theme statement for what an article might be about. And then you take a look at the article and break it down into major blocks of information. You go, oh, look, they spent like 3 paragraphs talking about that sentence in the abstract. They spent another 2 paragraphs talking about this, another sentence in the abstract. Oh, and they talked about that too. Maybe the second half of that sentence or another sentence in the abstract. And you kind of work your way through that. This is why if you've got an article that already breaks the article down into bits and pieces, it can be useful to you. And then once you've gotten all the sections summarized, don't give me details. The whole purpose of an abstract is to tell me in general what's there. If I want the details, your abstract tells me, go read the article. I'm not telling you the details, because if you really are that interested, go read the article. And then at the very end, some articles have important stuff. They may have maps, they may have graphs, they may have diagrams. They may have a little box where they interviewed somebody, or they tell you something special about what the general article is about. They call that a sidebar. And so you have a line to put that in. Maybe your article has that, maybe it doesn't have that. But it's there, and your abstract is a way for somebody to very quickly go, is it worth it for me to read that article? Does it have the information I'm looking for? And you know, maybe I'm looking for a map, and you need to tell me that there's a map in there. Okay. If you don't already have the sample abstracts or the sample articles, then I do have a couple that I stuck to the bottom of this folder. And we're going to use the library's database. This is how you can find articles too, for the ones that you've got to do on your own. So if you don't have these samples, this is still a good part of the video to watch, because I didn't have a chance really to go through this when we all stood in the lab, and I kind of walked you through how the semester was going to work. Okay. We want to go to the Evans Library. Why it says it's the Evans Library on the top when it is really the library, and then you got to access the main page. So there's a couple of clicks. Once you're on the main page, and there's it says research guides. All of the different subject areas have little collections of databases that we put on our own little list together. Nice thing about the video is you can slow it down, you can back it up, you can see what I did. But eventually you want to get here to the list of science databases. Actually, I'd be really happy if Alt Health Watch wasn't on there. And the ones that I am gonna, if you don't have the print ones, you only need 2 of them. But I've got more than 2 here that you can choose from. So listen to me walk you through this, and you know, take little notes as you go, or if at the end you decide, oh, I want to do that one or I want to do this one, you can always back the video up and find that spot. So the Associates Program Source. Now to find this one, I'm going with the title, One and Done. That isn't how I found it in the first place. And there's an article here in Science News. So it's not the first thing that comes up when you put One and Done in, but it's the second thing that comes up. Now this is what happens with this particular database. This was the Associates Program Source, which is actually one of the better ones to use. And so this tells you the name of the article. The author is it, let me get the hand off of there. This is from 2017, but as I said, my examples don't necessarily fit the timing requirement. But it tells you the volume and the issue in the pages. So it's from this person, it's from this source, it's from this year, and it's a really, really good idea when you're searching through the databases to find articles, that you find ones with a PDF. Because your job is to find one that was at least a page of text. And the only way to really know that is to look at a picture of the original article. And that one has a picture of the original article. There it is, there's a page, there's another page, there's another page, there's another page. Notice it's broken up into pieces. Now, they get fancy with the names of the titles, so you can't just list the names of the blocks usually and get away with it, because on hide and seek, what the heck does that mean? But you can use that as a clue to go, okay, can I reduce this whole area to a single sentence in my summary? And then can I reduce the next area into a single sentence in my summary? They've got graphs of vaccine, how the vaccine was effective over the various years. Sometimes they guess right, sometimes they guess wrong. They've got a thing on strains. So they've got some stuff to talk about at the end of your abstract too, that might be important for somebody to read about. So this is one of your choices, this particular article. The next one, in the quotes, I'm putting best protection, because it took me a while to find good articles, and then now I had to come up with words that would make it easier to find my way back. Influenza vaccine. And I'm looking for something from the FDA consumer. So it's the fifth one in. Again, title of the article, author, source. I keep doing that with the little hand, the cursor. Volume and issue number, page numbers. It has the digital version, but it also has the picture version, the PDF. Finding stuff that wasn't like in National Hog Farmer, which is right above. So this is your second option, is to do this article. This one's got a protection schedule in it, so that's something you would need to mention. And a little sidebar on influenza drugs. So there's a lot of stuff, but again, it's broken down into parts. They've got a little sidebar on good health habits. There's a lot to talk about here, but it's a long article, but you can break this down into bits. It might be a little long for the amount of lines I gave you in the lab, but you can break it down. Okay, so that's your second choice of options. Going into the General Science Collection, which is a database from a different company. I tried to pick a couple of different company sources. This one's a little tricky to use. I put in diabetes. And then this particular database, it assumes you're looking for something technical. So the very first thing it gives you are academic journals. These are peer-reviewed, usually pretty technical journals. And that's not for our class, that's really not what you're trying to look through. Click on magazines. Magazines typically are things written more for the general public. And if the same thing works now. Down a ways is this article. This is put together a little bit differently than the other databases, but it's pretty easy to follow. There's the name of the article. Notice they're using the weird capitalization rules here. There's the person's name, but they don't have it last name first. There's the source. There's the volume and the issue, here's the date. And on this one, if you click on it, this one doesn't give you a PDF, but it gives you a length, and if it's more than 2,000 words, it was more than a page of text. So this is how you go through one of these articles. This one actually, it was broken down into bits, and you can see a new bit is started when they do this all capital letters thing. So this is another one that you can look at, but they do not, I don't think ever in this particular one use PDFs. Another thing that's up here is I put in parasites. It'll automatically go back to academic journals if you put a new thing in. So I clicked on magazine again. And the one that I want you to use as an example is worming your way to better health. Is that to battle autoimmune diseases and allergies. Again, written in the format that you use. They aren't all that way, but and it gives you the name and it gives you all the stuff. And again, you know, relatively long article, definitely more than a page of text. Looks like it had this graph on it, and they just printed out the labels. That's a little tricky though. Okay, the science database, that was the third one. And what we're going to do here is diabetes treatment, if I could spell. This one is not like Google. It will correct your spelling sometimes, but you can't always, depending on how technical the word is, it may not know what you're trying if you put it in wrong. Here's another one where you can, over here on the left side, link it just to magazines. And the article that I picked out is down a ways. Diabetes prevention and treatment. Is that this one is, down here, this person, this source, sometimes they'll put in where the thing is published, volume and issue number, page numbers. They didn't do the capitalization rules differently here. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Is it, they sort of did here. We do have a PDF that you can look at. This one's not a really, really long article. So it may be a good, good one to try. Okay, let me go back to, well, I guess I can't search from this particular page. I have to go back to, okay, food poisoning, and in quotes, factory farming. Quotes tells the computer that you want those two words together in that order. That one hangs on to the magazine thing. And, nope, I don't think it really did the search for that. There we go. And then the first thing that comes up is factory farming and human health from The Ecologist. There is the PDF. And you scroll it down. Again, articles broken up into bits. Those are your choices for And also, if you're looking at this, if you were in the lab and you took a choice and you don't like the choice that you took, and you want to use one of the ones that I just showed, feel free. Is that I've got a list, I know what's in it, all of them, so I basically abstracted them myself already, so I know what should be in there. Okay, the next thing is you're doing 4 art abstracts through the semester. Only 2 of them are from print articles. 2 of them are from websites. So if I go to Google here, and okay, I'll put in diabetes treatment. You get ads. The first couple I wouldn't trust. This one is from the American Diabetes Association. Here's the deal with the websites. They need to be updated this year. That's easy. You look down at the bottom, or if they have news that they put up, as they have current news up, you know it's been updated this year. Down at the bottom, there's usually copyright dates, or there's dates on articles, and so you can tell pretty quickly whether it's been updated this year or not. Is it big enough? Your typical website is big enough. It needs to be big enough that inside the website it has at least 10 pages. And I'll show you that in a minute. It's got to be biology oriented. And as I said, medical is biology. And it has to be reliable. That's the tough thing about the web, is that anytime you're on a website and you go to the home page, your question is, who put it here? And why should I trust that they know what they're talking about? Usually there's a little link that says about or about us that will tell you about the website and who put it up, who's responsible for it. And sometimes there'll be people and they'll tell you their background, and you'll go, okay, this person teaches 7th grade and they're telling me about diabetes treatments. I don't know that I really trust that they've got the background to do that. Or they don't tell you their background. They just go, we have the most wonderful website in the world. We've won 18,000 awards you've never heard of. That's a real red flag. If they don't really tell you who they are or why you should trust them, don't trust them. But if there's an organization, I always look at who's in the organization, because there's some very fancy organizations out there, fancy in terms of what it looks like, and it turns out it's just some guy that doesn't have the background to really be talking about it, or a collection of like diabetes treatment, and you look at it's all parents. There's no doctors consulting. There's no professionals connected to it. You don't know whether they did their homework well enough, whether they're really telling you the truth or not, whether they've got the background to give you information that actually is real information. So that's part of what you're looking for. So I see American Diabetes Association, I know that that's going to be okay. NIDDK is a government organization, the National Institute of something diseases. Medical News Today is just a collection of press releases. So that one, if you go and look, it's not going to really tell you much. Let's see what this is. Why is diabetes treated? One Touch. Okay, they're selling something. But remember I said they would have an About Us page? Let's see. I couldn't even find it at first. Yeah, this is about they're selling a glucose meter, it looks like. And of course, you can never trust what they're telling you, because they're going to give you a very slanted idea of what's going on. Oops. Sorry, I'm used to my setup with Google, where it you can always tell it to open it in a different tab. So your original search is always there. I have to remember to do that. So that wasn't a website that you really could use. there's ads at the top and at the bottom. All sorts of ads here. Okay, when you click on something from Google, it takes you to a web page. Typically, that web page is inside a bigger site. And you need to abstract the whole site, not just this particular page that you landed on. So here we have a page about diabetes. The address is really, really long. There's a few different ways to go to the website itself. One is to get up here in the address, go all the way to the end, and then just peel it back to the first slash. Holy mackerel. Yeah, this is selling something too. And evidence-based clinical decision support at the point of care from Wolters Kluwer, which I would assume is a German company. Now, if I clicked on this, usually the banner would take you to the same page. This one does not. Let's see what they're going to tell us about themselves. Oh, this is very much selling things. That's what you're doing. You're sorting through and trying to decide what's the purpose here. Is it who put this up? What are they trying to do? Here they're trying to sell some sort of information system. And so is their information reliable? Who knows? Is that it's going to be skewed, there's going to be a bias because you're selling. So I would not use them as a website. I went past a lot of websites that would be useful. WebMD, you go to the main site and then tell me what's on the main site, that sort of thing. Go back to the first page. Yeah, we'll do this. So this is a page about natural remedies for type 2 diabetes, which is a little iffy. But this is not the website, this is the web page. This is the website. Remember I said there's banners you can click on. Usually down at the bottom there's links that you can click on. This one doesn't have a link here, but it very often does. They have an about link. Let's go. We could peel the address back. Let's go see what this gets us. Yep, this is the same thing we would have gotten peeling the address back. This is a hospital. Well, one of those big hospital organizations that's obviously associated with Stanford, which is where? There's a whole bunch of Stanfords and Stanfords in the country. So this is in Connecticut. But it is medical. That would make it reliable. Now your job is to abstract it. I just did part of that. This is the main website for a hospital organization in Connecticut. And then it's a matter of you look at the links and go, what do they offer? And sometimes you can get away with just talking about, they have locations. Do you need to explain what that is, or can you just tell me what the name of the link is? The name of the link will work. Patients and visitors. That you might want to do a little bit of a sentence. That may be, I'm not sure what the heck that is. It could be a few different things. So anytime a link doesn't tell you enough just by quoting the link, and you are quoting if you use their wording, just a little description. Go there and, in like half a sentence, tell me what's there. Website abstracts sometimes can get fairly long because some websites offer a lot of stuff. And even breaking it down to this as one statement, and this is one statement, and this is one statement, you may still wind up talking about an awful lot. Don't include stuff that won't be there in a week. If they have a news story like so-and-so deals with COVID-19, then you can go, well, they have a news story in the middle of the page. That's good. If I come in a month, maybe they still have a news story, but it's probably not the same one. So you have to think about, you're abstracting the website in a way that it's gonna stay reliable. Okay. I know I've gone way longer on this than I should have, but you've got a pretty good idea. This is mostly done for the people that didn't make it into the lab and didn't hear my quick and sloppy description of how to do all this stuff. And so it's there primarily for them. If you want to put it on, it's too late now. I should have told you this at the beginning. Anyway, that gets us to the end of the lab though. And the lab can be submitted into Blackboard. It's you type it up and on the Word document and send it in, submit it through the Dropbox. You can also submit, I'll talk about this in the lab, submit something into the Dropbox and then hand me the physical copy, because I cannot put a mark into the system unless something goes into Dropbox that I can actually put a grade in on. But I actually would much rather get the physical copy of your lab sheets and then do the Dropbox stuff.